Okay, this is going to be a short video, but I wanted to talk about something that's pretty important in Photoshop, and that is um, managing size and image resolution. So we have the same image that we had before. It's two layers. It's rendering from a while ago, and I'm going to go up to the Image tab or Image menu, and I'm going to go to Image Size. And this is a pretty important little dialog that's going to pop up. Canvas size, not so much. It's not quite as important. I use it less often, but image size is very important. Um, what this tells you is it's a variety of things, and this sort of dialog here relates to this, and basically what it's telling you is that there is a given print size, and so the tendency for this to print at roughly 12.5 by 17.5. That's basically the paper size that this is going to default to. And at that size, it is going to have 300 pixels per inch, or you might be more familiar with DPI or dots per inch. So if you were to print this at its default print size of 17.607 inches by 12.64 inches, you would have a resolution of 300 inches. And what that comes to, ignoring print size, is 5,282 pixels by 3,792 pixels. So this sort of relates to this, but this has the added variable of print size. So there's a very, very important checkbox down here. Constrained proportions is not so important, but you can imagine what it does. If I were to change this to 6, this changes to 8.358. So that's proportional to what it was before, where this was more like 12.6. So, but what is important down here is resample image. So I would leave constrained proportions on unless there's a reason not to. But resample image is very, very important. Look what happens when it's off, and I say, first of all, this becomes deactivated, by the way. When this is off, and I change this to 150 dpi, which is half the resolution, this print size is going to double. So I'm going to say 150. So now it's a 35 inch by 25 inch image. That's because we're not resampling. And resampling basically means that you are not changing the resolution. It's not going to let you lose image quality if this is off. It's saying, no, this is the quality, we're just going to change the size, the print size. We could change this to 1000 dpi, and this is going to go to a very small image, because at 1000 dpi, since we're not changing the resolution, then it's going to have to decrease the print size to maintain that resolution, because it's not going to invent pixels, basically. So let's go back to 300. So with this on, I could actually decrease the size of this image, or I could decrease the resolution. Let's decrease the resolution to 150. Let's say we need the image size to drop down because it's too big of an image. We don't need that data. So let's go to 150. Notice the print size does not change. This changes. So now we literally have fewer pixels. It says 14.3 megs was 57.3 megs. So let's go back to 300. Now it just says 57.3. So that's the original size. We could go to 72. Now it's only 3.3. We could go to 600. Or we could just say we know a certain resolution that works 1600 by about 1200 is a very common resolution. So that's kind of the way that this works. Let's go 300, say 12 inches by 8.6 inches, 300 dpi. That's about half where we were. Let's make it even smaller, 150. So now it's going to be basically roughly 8.5 by 11, not quite, but 8.5 by 12, and it's going to be 150 dpi. And you might just know that that's what your printer can handle or something, or that's what you want. Or this is going to be a small image on your board. And so resample is on, and so we're actually losing data. So when I say OK, this image size is going to decrease, and we're going to have fewer pixels to deal with. And so now it's a much smaller image because we resampled. So if I undid that, another functionality of this image size is that if we uncheck resample, and we know absolutely that we want this image to be our money shot, this has got to be at least 30 inches wide, then we could say 3, 0, and okay, now if we constrain proportions, it's going to be 21.5 inches tall. So we're like, okay, this is going to stretch across our board, it's going to be 30 inches wide, it's going to be huge. But what's the dots per inch? Well, because resample is off, we can now say with certainty that we're going to be 176 dots per inch. So that's acceptable. 150 is kind of the bare minimum. 72 is what the typical computer screen is. 300 is kind of what's recommended. But 150 is the bare minimum. I've printed at 150 before and never gotten any complaints. So we could print this image. Let's see what we could get this to, because you can do this a different direction too. We could say, what's the biggest we could get this at 150 dpi? So we just say 150, and so we could print this image at 35 inches by 25 inches at 150 dpi. And if we say OK, this image size, the image size may or may not change on the screen, I'm not totally sure, but I do know that we won't be losing pixels or resolution because this is unchecked. And so as we change these values, notice this is linked to this, and you see this little link, chain link. Those are all linked together, so there's nothing we can change that's actually going to change the resolution. So we can say OK, and yeah, it doesn't even change size. It's the same image it was before. We just changed the print size because resample was unchecked.